This conference will now be recorded.
Yesterday and go home to do nothing but type it. Don't let anybody touch that.
Where's the stand for it?
Just don't lay it on the
No,
table.
just kidding.
Yeah, that was Dick. Yeah. Good morning. All right, I guess we're at 9 o'clock. Let's rise and pledge the flag before we get started. I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you to those that came virtually and thank you to those that came in person. Just a polite reminder, this is a special town board meeting where we're gonna stay in gear. And even though I know there'll be lots of questions at some point, I ask you to just bear with us and let us get through this. I am actually, by the end of the meeting, and I might as well bring it up now, I'm asking the board to consider the August 23rd special meeting to have adequate time for your public questions. And that would be ahead of a public hearing. By that time, I suspect we will be 99.9% solid in our direction. So that would be an appropriate time to take some of your concerns.
Derek, my only comment on that is that's kind of falls out of how we've ever done anything with the local.
I know, that's why I'm putting it out for us to discuss before we end today, in case it can't work. I realize the public hearing is part of the law process. Yeah. It's a matter of whether this board considers taking questions prematurely or not. And
I think it's a good idea in the sense that we can maybe make any last minute adjustments, because once it is presented to the public, then it's almost like a done deal. So I think even giving them an opportunity before it's a done deal, even though it's not.
I'm gonna save the last 5 minutes for us to bring this up again.
Okay.
To get started today, I think what I'd like to do is just run down a few items where I feel we're at so far. If that's not true.
What about SOA?
SOA.
Oh, that's today.
Yeah.
All right. I had a minor change in today's agenda, and we need just a couple minutes to discuss the town's financial contribution, if you will, to the septic system pump out on Lake Placid. As everyone knows, it is the drinking water resource for the whole village and the town as a whole, not all aspects of the town. But long story short, each year we try to do more pump outs to, let's say, bring the lake into compliance. And it isn't so much an inspection process as it is a service to have tanks pumped on a more timely basis so that there aren't problems down the road. This year, there is a request from Shore Owners Association to help them with the price of the barge that carries the pump truck up and down the lake. I am proposing that we take one of those days and pay that fee. So from there, I'll take concerns or questions from.
My biggest thing in support of it is being out there last year and seeing what I saw, but that's not the point. They do have the schedule and they control it. I forgot her name.
Lindy,
thank you.
and Christina.
Yeah. And they've got a great schedule to do it, but they have enough funds to do it the one day, maybe two. And every year they get behind. If we can provide that one day, and I think that's a much better price than you and I anticipated.
Yeah, Derek, did you say the price? What is the price?
It's $230 an hour for the barge, and last year our longest day was 10 hours.
10 hours. And I think by that one extra day, whether it be 10 hours, whatever, okay, they catch up on their rotation. And that's to me, that's a big thing. Regardless of what, the situation out there, which we've seen is whatever. In some places disgusting, but it'll catch them up And maybe in the future, we can, as Derek said, we can bring in non-SOA members. But again, it'll catch them up in the rotation. So starting next year, they're there. And what they do with that at that point, we'll see. But that to me is
I think
important.
it's very important to note that back in 2010 to 2013 is when complaints started coming in on different aspects, if you will, of failing systems. And I think we owe the Shore Owners Association a huge thanks for stepping up and providing this service. Otherwise, I can tell you, it would all back on us because of the law we passed. So being a partner in this system, I think, not only shows our thanks to them, but a willingness of us to keep up with that law we passed. And the amount is, in my eyes, minimal.
My only concern is historical perspective, which I just got, so.
Sure.
I
So
think
are
it's a
you,
good idea.
you ready for mine?
Sure.
I have a feeling with these multi-million-dollar homes that they can afford it themselves. And if we're using ARPA funds, I can't justify spending, and I know it's not a small amount, and I know that, I understand from your perspective that you're helping the community as a whole, not just the shore owners. But I feel for $2,300 or whatever, they can pay for it, and that the $2,300 could go to something more community-based and could improve areas where there are other people who cannot afford that service.
One thing to
Water is pretty community-based.
So the flip side of that is, if I was to spend any money, we would be creating a system where we check their septic and find them extremely excessively if they're contaminating our.
That's another aspect of it.
So that's what
we're doing. Okay.
It's not an inspection, but.
No, but I mean, there's another, it's not an inspection, it's an observation. But Mike and Darcy, they have a schedule where they go out and check these things, okay? So that's another aspect of it. And and to a point, because I struggled with it a little bit too. Remember, I don't know what each landowner out there, camp owner or whatever, pays the SOA. Remember, we're providing it to the SOA. We don't know what kind of funds they have, okay? We look at multi-million-dollar homes out there, which I agree with, they are.
Well, some of them are multi, some of them are in the tens of
Oh, yeah,
millions.
that's what I mean. And they can afford it, but they're paying to an SOA and the SOA takes care of it, okay? So I look at it giving to the SOA who has potentially limited funds. And so we're helping the association out, not truly each one. And I mean, they're paying for it, anyway, they're paying for the service. The SOA and potentially us are just paying for the barge.
Yeah.
That's, it's not like, okay, we're gonna pay, yours property is worth $10 million and we're gonna pay to have your property pumped, your septic pumped. We're not, we're just paying for the barge so to get it out there, that's all.
To me, that's kind of the same thing personally, but, so I'm not gonna belabor the point, I just think that I feel there are other opportunities to maximize the ARPA funds, and this isn't the one.
Okay.
There are several camps out there that are inhabited on an intermittent basis. So do they go to those camps just automatically if the owners are not there?
No.
I thought they did.
They're in the process of like reaching out to.
Yeah,
So
yeah,
this
yeah,
is
they
a
don't-
system.
yeah.
They can't just go there and like pump it out.
Right. I see those places as more of a problem because they're not there. So
Yeah.
what happens?
And not every camp owner is in the association,
Correct.
which is another big.
Correct.
That's the big one we saw, just to point out, one we saw last year. It had just recently been sold and it was a really bad septic situation. Previously, the previous owner had not been, which had been longstanding, had not been a member of the association, so they had no idea. We go out and the new owner had no idea. And we traced it, well, we didn't go up the hill.
Long story short, just so you know, the second phase of research, let's say, Shore Owner Association, very organized. They have this rotating list that has worked since 2013. I have met with Todd Anthony and with Mike Orticelli as well to create a list of those non-SOA owners so that the service is offered to them as well. So this is an ongoing system to bring that lake into compliance. And the only thing I can say is if you saw an extreme case of a failing system, you'd change your opinion in about 5 minutes.
Well, I think if I saw a failing, then the contacting that particular person and finding them enough that they wake up and address it is more of my concern than kind of, and it's almost like we're enabling it.
And environmentally, watching that lake is tremendously important. So I understand everybody's opinion. Is there any other comments before I wrap this up and we make a decision?
No, I would just say, I appreciate what Jason's saying, but to me, the SOA is a very valuable partner, and they take on a heavy lift of organizing this, doing this. They take on heavy lifts of milfoil, of other things. To me, it's a minor thing that we can do to say thank you for keeping this amazing asset clean for us.
But I understand what you're saying, but I feel like we should demand that we all drink from it, and if they want to own multi-million-dollar homes, they should be it's almost inherent in the purchase that they're stewards of our water in addition to it. And
Which
we
I
should
think they are
demand
good
that all
stewards,
them.
and they're asking for
Many
help.
are,
What's that?
many are, it's just, they're
But the
just
septic
asking for-
system, we all know, we have not patrolled it as much as we ought to, and we even had to make that adjustment where the septics weren't, it was impossible to have that mandatory X number of feet. Like, I feel like this is another aspect that if the community hears that we contribute, even if it's $2,300 of ARPA funds to help millionaires with their septics, I couldn't fathom that. Even though it is our drinking water, we should demand that it should be clean and they should not
We
contaminate.
do through a law.
Yeah, I don't recall coming through any fines coming through or discussions of fines.
No, and I'll tell you why there hasn't been fines, because, and Darcy, you can back this up, whenever we identify a problem, the property owners have reacted right away with an immediate fix. So the program is successful.
Well, I think we should get to the point where we shouldn't have, when we go around, Darcy or Mike, is that what the normal procedure is? They shouldn't find anything at all. It's our drinking water. And if it is, they should be fined so extremely heavily.
But people
They'll
aren't
never, ever
intentionally
avoid it
doing
again.
it, Jason.
What's that?
The people aren't intentionally doing it.
I'm just saying that if there was a local person who was living, and their house was impacting sort of the environmental component of their neighborhood, we would come down on them much harder. We wouldn't be giving them $2,300 to fix their problem. That's just 13 years on the village board, and I've only been here 6 months. But I don't think we'll be giving $2,300 to some local area to kind of fix whatever their house is impacting environmentally. I'm just throwing it out there.
I was to say that we've given money to tear down a trailer on like the Hurley Ave neighborhood and like just put it on their tax lien. That was like $20,000.
On the tax lien, but we're getting it back.
True.
So we're not giving it, we're
It's a
just
lot
kind
more
of.
money though.
Okay, we all understand where everybody lands. I'm gonna make a motion that we pay for one day's barge at $230 an hour based on the time it's on the lake. And the payment will go to Harlow Excavating that runs the barge. And that will be for next Friday, the 12th of August.
And it's for a one-year commitment.
It is a one-year commitment. Second to the motion?
Second.
Further discussion? All in favor? Aye. Opposed? Okay, we'll note that Jason opposed. Motion is carried. Thank you. It's a good discussion. All right, now, back to the matter at hand. I'll just go through a few items of where I believe we're at right now. We can pick up with questions or comments and move forward. So far, we've recognized there are 206 STR rental permits in the town outside the village. We are proposing that all existing permits remain in place. Again, we recognize that there are 206. Our last meeting, we had suggested reducing those permits by attrition, or in other words, when a home sells by 10% or 21 permits, bringing it down to 185. Certainly that's not in stone, but that's where we left things off. Wherever these permits are allowed, we are leaving the concept of a 120-day limit. They will be open. So our code enforcement people will not be struggling with determining the days of rentals. We do have a few questions that I think we left on the table. One is within the gateway corridor. Will those permits be reinstated if a person sells? Or do we prefer to draw that line in the sand and there's just no more permits, period? That's one question. There's also a question of hosted. Will we leave hosted permits open or again, draw that line in the sand so that no new permits would be conducive to a person finishing their basement or upstairs room or one level of their house could turn into more long-term housing? I'd just like to clarify that question as well. We still haven't clarified how we're gonna do a wait list. There was a question about, what about variance applicants? Because they were started or not started in the system, should they receive a permit, or because they were denied in their variance that they are out, depending on our final decision? We received a letter just this morning which talked about rural countryside and a minimum lot size for permits. That would really only come into play if we are accepting new permits. The way we're talking so far is that there would be no new ones. And finally, under PD districts, planned developments, if we draw this line in the sand with no new permits, does it apply to planned development areas where only the existing permits stay, or that becomes open within that district? I'm just confused. That gives us quite a bit to talk about, unless, do you have further concerns like that?
There's just one that you didn't mention. So like if you're looking at, like if we're just trying to stay like big picture and not get into the nitty gritty, and where does this cap apply?
Right.
So you mentioned hosted.
Yep.
So that's a big question, does cap apply to hosted? And then you brought up PD, does cap apply to PD? And then to me, the third one is, does cap apply to condo and townhomes?
Oh,
Existing
that's right.
condo and townhomes. And like, I'm not gonna harp on this, but like to go, like there's a reason why it took 2 years for the land use code committee to come up with these the recommendations of the overlays, because we dealt with all these questions already, like thought about the cap and then said, well, what about PD? What about condos? And what about townhomes? And so that's like, that has already all been thought through, and that's why the overlay was like kind of the answer. Because if you say all those things are exempt, then why not just go back to the overlay? You know what I mean? Like, what's the point of the cap if you're
Because we
exempting
reversed
everything?
it, I get it.
Yeah, but I'm just saying it's point of discussion, like, it doesn't mean you're going the wrong way, but it's just something to think about, why are we, and then the other thing is if we exempt all those areas, and I think of that 206, we should take out from that number ones that are hosted, ones that are PDs, and ones that are existing condos and townhomes, because that's not a real number of a cap anymore. You know what I mean? Like all of a sudden that number will come to like down to like 100
If we take them out.
if we take them out.
We take them out.
And so then what's really only capped is rural countryside and South Lake and North Lake.
I know
Because we
it.
said no to town residential and village residential. So
No
there'd just
new
be
ones?
Yeah,
No
no
new
new
ones.
ones. So there would just be 3 areas that were capped. And so that cap to me should probably be about 100 or whatever it is, taking out those. I just said a lot of things. I'm like, there's a lot of things.
And you didn't
Where do we start?
You didn't go fast yet either, so this is good, it's early.
So,
I was listening to her on one speed.
Yeah, really.
so again, outlining that, so basically what you're saying, if we were to maintain where we're at right now, that works the best. Whatever is existing is it.
I don't know if it's the right answer. Just because.
No, but if I use that to compare your argument, it helps me understand better.
Okay.
So we can do that real quick.
So currently there's 31 hosted. So you're proposing,
Like, if, I was just saying, whatever we exempt from the cap should be
Should be.
backed out of the number.
Correct.
Oh, yeah. So,
Yeah.
so we got 206 minus 31.
Why are we exempting any out of the cap? That's what I was.
That's the question.
No,
So
that's the question. We're just trying to come up with, I'm trying to come up with a number. So we have 206 total TOV. Okay, and 31 of the, Rick, you said 31 are hosted.
I think that's what our list says.
I didn't bring those.
Darcy's always the number.
Oh, you know what? This is great. I have it in paper.
I can pull it up in 1 second.
It's not very,
I didn't bring mine, so I didn't want to.
all right, so.
Don't worry, I hear the tree crying, get it.
31,
So that correct, Darcy, 31?
according to this.
Okay. Let's ask the authority here.
Yeah.
But it's not necessarily the number that matters, it's like the philosophy behind it. Like to Derek's point, if we exempt, like let's say we don't exempt hosted, but we honor all the ones that exist already. Going forward, if someone's building a house or considering some extra income, they're gonna say, I am limited to a long-term rental. Like, and so we're gonna be creating long-term rentals instead of short-term rentals.
And that was our biggest benefit in this decision,
Yeah.
that it promotes other housing.
This was more kind of pointed to the village, but so if because there seems to be kind of mirroring what the town is doing, the village is doing, is mirroring. And if we go no new, you said unhosted, but you could have, so this was, the point of contention, I was so confused, because I don't even think the village board could all agree on it. Like, is it no more new unhosted or no more new hosted?
Period.
Or
No more new period.
But that's-
What we're saying is period. What is up for discussion right now is hosted, PD, and existing condos and townhomes. But right now we're talking about hosted.
No, I can see your point. If somebody says, okay, I'm gonna build this, I'm gonna build a attached garage, and above it, put an STR
Yeah.
in my home.
Mhm.
That's a good point. There's not,
Technically, you can't do that now because you can't do accessory dwelling units. New accessory dwelling units can't be short-term rentals. Like that already exists in the code. So technically, you can't do that now. But like, let's say someone was like a basement or something that was within their house.
okay, I got you. So you can convert it.
Yeah.
Convert it.
Or building new, it just can't be an accessory dwelling unit. Because our code since 2011
Right.
said that accessory dwelling units cannot be
We're
short-term.
talking within a primary residence.
Yeah.
Right.
Or attachment thereof.
Right.
So if somebody says, okay, in our neighborhood says, okay, I have a garage, I have a space to go above my garage. So they convert it. And so they go off the list, they become hosted. What do we do? So that opens up a slot on the cap.
Oh, because they were already
Let's say within the next year,
unhosted.
they were already unhosted.
That's like going down a rabbit hole.
But because-
We're not at that.
I have another rabbit hole
I see
for
big
it.
picture.
Because if we're not
Big picture.
accepting in residential any longer, then would that negate them?
See, that's.
Again, there's more,
That's,
Yeah.
yeah, I mean, that's something we have to address.
Right.
And maybe you can, the collective intelligence here could filter out whether what I'm gonna say applies or not. So the concept of the village was, it's hard to live here, it's expensive. We wanna, there's a sentiment to allow this to subsidize being able to live here. So if we're allowing a lot of other sort of STRs, then what happens to that local who is just like, I'm living here, but now this new law is coming in and it seems like it may proliferate around and it's gonna be becoming even more expensive to live here. How come I don't have an opportunity? That's where I was, that was.
You're saying the effort to get rid of them is gonna create a higher cost?
No, but the thing is, you're not, it's gonna create a sense of, the investments, like if, say, we're gonna grandfather every STR that already exists, it doesn't really help the people that are already there and impacted by it.
Until we agree that there's a cap number, and when places sell, the permit isn't reinstated.
So the place to sell, is that what we're definitively
Yeah,
thinking?
sorry, that was the one other thing that.
No, we haven't
wasn't stated.
decided on that,
I
right?
haven't decided on that, but that's what's being proposed, that the permit does not carry with the property.
Right, so therefore, if you've got X number of dollar house, which is technically be affordable for a local person, then it doesn't transfer. No, there you go.
Okay.
So nobody's gonna buy it as an investment because they're gonna have to wait for that to go down. The cap to go down.
My overwhelming support for no new permits creates a way for us to not only manage the number of permits, but to watch our occupancy tax revenues as well. So, for instance, if we pick 185 and those 21 places sell over the next 3 years, we have a direct way of knowing what's coming in as revenue, knowing what's coming in permit fees, and regulating it against the housing crunch, if you will. So we have now an automatic way to either add STR permits if we feel we need it, or further from 10% to 20%. We are in effect making a system here today that is trying to react to what you as a village person is doing. We have to find that line in the sand that's as fair as it can be on both sides. There's gonna be an exception to everything we talk about
Well, I
today.
agree. I just, and this is the last thing I'll add in, it's just with the concept of this has existed, it's moving forward, it's grandfathered in. So I have and no one's gonna rent 365 days a year. But I just recently had an STR right across the street. It's unhosted and it's gonna be grandfathered in. And the village is deciding whether it's gonna be, sale X number of years, but it looks like it's gonna be the sale of property. So I'm looking at 20 years potentially of this person renting up to potentially 365 days a year. It's not gonna happen. What if they rent just 100 and it's every holiday and they take up all the parking spots, they park on my lawn every single weekend, and I'm calling the hotline every single week. I'm like, I can't fathom that. I can't, and I don't want to put another person in that position as well. That's my only sentiment. So
Then do you think your concern is more based toward enforcement?
that's one component of it, yeah.
Okay,
Yeah, because that's the point. I mean, hey, we're across the street from you, same thing as you. Okay, same thing. I mean, I sent pictures and everything to the owner. I see the same thing you do. Probably see it more. I'm just saying, probably see it more, okay? However, yeah, I'm just saying, it's a big place. The point is, that's the enforcement part. That's not, I mean, that's a different issue. And I think a bigger issue, but that's not what we're talking about.
Well, just the thing is like, okay, if we're gonna cement this and this person's gonna be here 30 years, this year is gonna be another 20 years, the person behind me is gonna be another 30 years. Why are they making $100,000, $200,000 on an STR since they get unlimited renting? Whereas then I can't, you know what? Can't beat them, join them. I can't do that.
respectfully, your two situations are village.
No,
I'm
just saying, but this could translate to town as well. I'm just saying, it will eventually, if not already.
You could. I mean, yes, there's much less.
But this
chances of it,
list
but you're right.
helps clarify that we have no one district, actually, we have one district that's somewhat saturated. Other than that, we don't have that in this list. So it is 90% different than the areas.
Oh, yeah.
You two are 150
Now.
yards apart. So we still didn't answer Emily.
Sorry.
Yeah, I mean, to Jason's point, like, it's not gonna happen to anyone else. We already said no new unhosted permits in town residential and village residential.
No, they're already existing now. That's what I'm saying. The ones that exist now, and they're surrounded by them. and they're gonna do it for the entirety
Okay,
of
so
their
it sounds like an
living.
enforcement, like, I'm just gonna
That's the
stop you
thing,
there,
it's
like, it sounds
enforcement.
like enforcement, so that's not what we're talking about right now.
That's my point.
I guess the other proposal is, like, I've heard 5 years kicked around. You know, in
Mhm.
5 years, your permit expires. I just think we're opening ourselves up for a lot of litigation,
Oh, yeah.
because people have purchased these properties based upon the current law.
Mhm.
And now we switch it on them.
We're gonna have a lawsuit anyway, and that was one of the sort of the perspectives or the apprehensions of the prior boards, are like, okay, let's just not go too far, but then we were sued anyway. So it's
My
gonna happen
concern about the
regardless.
3 and 5 years is not necessarily legality, it's about flooding the market in 3 years or 5 years or whatever the X is, with 100 homes.
Right.
I mean, that's not good for any market. And so at least this way, maybe it's through natural attrition. And so in town residential and village residential, because they know that it can never be a short term again, they start considering a plan of what they're gonna do with it. Like maybe they'll continue to operate it for 5 or 10 years. Most people try and say that they're gonna eventually retire there, so maybe that is what will happen. I mean, we've heard that story a lot.
I can tell you
All
right
the
now,
time,
since,
or convert it, like I said, convert it to a hosted.
Yeah, but then they would have to live there, and they don't live
That's-
there.
No, or someone would.
But we already have this, not that we can't revisit the conversation, we already took operator out of the hosted.
yes, that's right.
Not that we can't revisit it, but we took operator out.
And just for a point of fact, I know of 2 homes that are on the market to sell right now that both have permits in town outside village. So we're already
At
2 down.
Yeah, 204.
I'm not saying good or bad, but that's just an action of one of our decisions.
I just don't compel to share that, but then we'll just.
So around the table, should we pursue your questioning further or remain with existing, that's it?
I mean, so it's not that I believe, like, really, it's all up for discussion. And I'm not saying that I believe one way or the other, but I can tell you the conversations that have been, that helped create these overlays, or the consensus of, that created the overlays. And was that things like hosted were different, PDs are different, and condos and townhomes were different. That we don't have to follow that logic, and it's totally fine, just, I'm really fine either way. I just wanted to bring up those discussion points. That, like, if you're saying, you know, the build out of White Coast Club and Resort, like I was out there last night, they're building a lot of houses out there. All those houses can't be they can be short-term rentals, but they're gonna have to get on the wait list.
Right?
I just think that we're gonna hear from a lot of people.
I agree. So let's concentrate on that one aspect. If we should change some of our thought. We recognized very early on that planned developments were a logical place where short-term rentals fit. Weddings are there. Anyway, it is a very transient population. Whether you own a condo or not, they're all seasonal. For the most part, I guess well over 90% of the residents in that planned development are seasonal. They come and go. So short-term rentals fit out there. Should planned developments and condos and townhomes have this unlimited amount because they are,
Self-regulating.
and they are self-regulating, that's right. They supply their own parking, and if parking doesn't fit, they draw their own limits. They would still be under noise constraints and enforcement by our code office as well. So I am fine with opening that aspect up if you think there's good justification for it. Fully realizing that we could potentially go from, we could double our numbers of STR permits in those areas.
But at the same time, what would hopefully happen is that there would be an attrition out of town residential and village residential.
Right. Which we also recognized as a boost toward housing.
Yeah, that's my only concern, is that, X LLC buys 4 units in the same townhouse or planned development community.
And it becomes 100% STRs.
Right.
But do you see a problem with White Coast Club and Resort being 100% short-term rental? Is that the
People
only
come and go
plan
now.
that- Darcy, is that the only, I refresh my memory? in the town.
That and here, the Farm Ridge to this place.
So we,
So Whiteface is the only,
yes, but then we would have to say it only applies to, like, you know how the land code committee did it, there was resort PDs and then residential PDs. And we said that Farm Ridge 2 was a residential PD, so, because that's gonna be, like, there's nothing there now, but it will be single family homes. So that's the, like, that would be the delineation.
Is there any other areas that would be concerned? Pine Hill is village, right?
Yeah.
Okay, so let's leave that alone.
So it's the Balsams,
Oh, it's South Science Center.
yeah, there's already restrictions.
They're already needed. So then we're basically talking about Whiteface Club.
Yeah, and so then does it become spot zoning that we say Whiteface Club and Resort can do whatever they want?
do they have their own homeowners
They have like
association?
4 or 5 HOAs, but
Okay.
not every house is part of the HOA.
But they have a pretty serious number of private homes that are not regulated by homeowners associations. So it becomes a problem within that whole district.
Well, originally, we had said, 2 years ago, whatever it was, that if you're a member of an HOA, you're exempt. So we
Right.
continue to say that, even though you're in a PD. If you're in a PD, what we're talking about, and you're a member of an HOA, then it does not apply. However, even though if you're in the PD, and we say this, if you're in the PD, not a member of an HOA, then
You're
normal,
You're
whatever.
on the wait list.
Yeah, then that's part of the cap.
And I'm good with that theory because what it will do, it will force the
That's a joint
homeowners
HOA.
to create an HOA.
Or to join the existing HOA that they refuse to join.
And how easy is that to recognize and enforce?
That would be done.
Darcy question.
How many more staff do you need for this?
Yeah. You know, that would make, to me, and again, that would, what I brought up earlier, with the hosted and unhosted, and if you decided, well, hosted and decide to do something with your existing building, then they would come off the list, and that would bring it down, and, you know.
So that's essentially giving regulatory power to the HOAs.
Right, which we already do.
Correct.
Which we already do, but now we're just taking, instead of saying that PD
Right.
as a whole, we leave them alone because whatever high percentage has an HOA, is a member of an HOA, we break it up. And
It's
to me,
definitely the logical
it
distinction.
is, that's what I'm saying. So we just don't go by the PD, we go by, well, in this PD, here's the situation. I think that makes more, to me, that makes more sense.
It does.
And it just throws people that don't have a home that are not, that single.
That's gonna be a temporary stopgap. I can see that.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, no, I know what you mean, but initially, I think that's the way to do it and include them in the cap.
Further thoughts? Emily, I can see the wheels turning.
No, it's just, so, I feel like when I left the last meeting, I was like, wow, that was like really restricted, like to say like 185 and no new permits. And now we're like backpedaling it. And it's not that it's the wrong thing, because maybe it is the right thing, because we want them to be able to grow somewhere. But for one thing, it makes it more complicated, right, to enforce, because we're saying there's these exemptions. I mean, to me, what matters the most is town residential and village residential. So as long as we're all agreeing on that one,
Yeah,
I can move forward.
I mean, do you foresee problems out there, Darce?
Not really. I mean, we already do have if you're part of an HOA or not. So it's really incumbent on the applicant to prove that they're part of an HOA, and that's okay.
I mean, I think I know the environment there as well as anybody that's gonna talk to you, because I worked there for 11 years. And overwhelmingly, the folks that build those tremendous, huge homes have no interest or very little interest in STRs.
Right.
The people that buy the condos and these new townhomes. Yes,
Which is
it
what
will,
they're building right now.
right.
Yeah.
And there are 3 of them, I think with 4 units per, does that sound right?
Yeah.
So there's a dozen there. There are a few smaller, old homes that currently rent that would like the distinction, like the HOA controlled things, because they have adequate parking and it fits the bill. So there will have to be some effort to recognize either the Whiteface Club as a homeowner association representing them, or their own group that does it. So I'm confident, like Dick says, if they follow that guideline, we can make that work. But let's not forget, like Emily just said, we've already recognized there could be a minimum of a dozen new ones there. As long as we are protecting
Town
those
and village residential.
town and village residential, we're still ahead of the game. So is that a recommendation you like the idea of?
Mike, do you want to give feedback on this? He's gonna say capital. Or he's gonna say, I can't hear you.
Well, and he could be doing double duty right now because
He
he's,
said he was-
I can hear you and I'm driving, so I'll probably get feedback and we'll talk later. Darcy can answer your questions.
Okay.
We were just trying to include you, Mike. We've got your competent colleague here.
So based on our discussion, I think that the number, so what would be harder for it, like you don't have to get on that list, is that there's not a PD permit. So it's
Right.
gonna take some extrapolation to figure out how many are in Whiteface Club and Resort. Because that's the only PD we're talking about.
We can get that number.
And so then the cap would only apply to rural countryside, South Lake, North Lake, and that's it. Because town residential and village residential are out,
Right.
so that only leaves
3 districts.
Gateway.
No, because we said.
We said
All
Gateway
right, well, let's
follows,
throw Gateway in, because we said if you're not fronting, right?
right?
So, yes, Gateway would be in, under, like, the.
No,
cap
no,
would-
no,
Will be, the cap would apply to them if they were not fronting.
yeah.
Right.
So let's back up and talk about fronting. Those are replaceable?
Yes, well, they're an exemption, so the exemptions are, we'll list the exemptions again. If you front on the main corridors of the Gateway corridor, the resort district of Whiteface Club and Resort, if you're a member of an HOA, if you're an active member of the HOA, and existing condos and townhomes.
Are you including the whole military in the Gateway corridor, or is that another?
Oh, yeah, we didn't. No, we did.
Yeah, we did.
We did.
But it's not all of.
It's
full
just
military.
Oh, yes,
I'm just saying, I mean, as far as it's not the whole stretch of.
But we actually didn't discuss that when we talked about an exemption, so that's another exemption.
All military fronting.
Fronting.
And so then, that's like a ton of exemptions, so what are we really doing?
You mean exemptions to the cap? That's why I don't think we should have
Well,
exemptions to the cap.
Well, they do, they're exemptions to the cap, but we just determine what's left and then we come up with a cap.
And so we'd be capping town, or, my
Rural
district is
countryside.
rural
Rural
countryside.
countryside.
Town and village residential.
Well, not
No.
really, because we're saying you can't have any new permits in there, so that's not part of the cap, they're just out.
Right?
Yeah, they're just out of it.
So rural countryside, North Lake and South Lake, Darcy, am I missing any?
Something's missing, isn't it?
So you're saying we're not counting the existing and town and village residential
Or cap.
towards the cap? Is that what I'm understanding?
No, I'm
We
just-
are leaving what is currently permitted with
Yes,
no new ones.
yes, but the existing ones are going to be not included in the overall number included when we distinguish a cap.
No, they will be included.
They will be included.
That
Okay.
number will be included. Because we want them to be able to move out.
If this list is accurate, there are 16 PDs.
But it doesn't tell you what PD.
Right.
How did you break it down by PD? That's not a permit.
Well,
Address,
Britt's clever like
Yeah.
that.
yes.
Are they all Whiteface Club?
Chipmunk,
Yes.
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 okay. Whiteface, Chipmunk, Whiteface Lodge Way is Peters Way.
Yep.
Yeah,
All
they're all-
Yep. And there's one hosted.
All right, so under the cap is, like that falls under the cap, the districts are rural countryside, North Lake, South Lake, exempt from the cap.
Wait a second. So the cap is rural countryside,
North Lake,
North Lake, South Lake.
yes. Exempt,
And if we break out the PD, if we break out.
oh, I was gonna go the other way.
Yeah,
About this.
that's
Okay.
So what's exempt
Okay.
is fronting on the corridors of Old Military and Gateway, which is OM and GC, and then resort PDs that are members of HOA,
Resort HOA.
that are members of HOA.
Right.
What am I forgetting? Oh, existing condos and townhomes with HOAs, which it's impossible that a condo or townhome wouldn't have an HOA, but we can throw that in there again. So if you like want to go the reverse, then what falls under the cap is Old Military and Gateway corridor outside of the corridor, outside of fronting.
Right. Corridors also.
How do we come to a number?
I think we need to have Britt do some magic about this list and give us the number that are over here and the number that are over here. And we want to take the number that's under the cap.
Yeah, we want the exact number.
Town residential.
Oh yeah, sorry, and then the number that goes under the cap too is the existing in town residential and village residential.
It's around 50.
And that does help us better identify the areas we are looking to protect's not a good word.
I decided, Jackie helped me decide on a new word yesterday, compatible, where
Yeah.
STR is a compatible use.
I'd like one of you to raise your hand and categorize this in a document for me. Raise your hand.
Thank you.
Because I think between yourself and Britt and Darce, it'll take the three of you to verify.
And I might change my opinion on a few things in the time being, but.
Well, you got 3 meetings left.
Yeah.
But I think we've gained good ground today. Our initial direction was oversimplified, I get it. But at least we're identifying where the people are gonna rise up and make us have to meld a little to avoid problems. Darcy, are we forgetting anything from our talk?
Or previous meetings.
I don't think so.
One of the other things that had come up recently was raising the STR fees. Permit fees. With a potential for, I think this is what the village is looking at, and that I talked to Kathy about it yesterday, and she was like, the village wants our revenue. I was like, no, they don't want our revenue. They just want to increase the revenue so that there could be additional help in the building office or additional compensation for existing employees in the building office to take on more of a STR, I'm calling it an STR compliance monitor role.
I think that's a great direction.
Village ideally would like the revenue from the STRs within the village, but it doesn't work that way.
We pay the entire department, so.
But however, we understand the existing structure and so on.
Duly noted.
I think that is an important aspect. I don't think you and Mike or replacements thereof can handle. I think enforcement could be improved and fines could be improved.
That's the thing, I mean,
Yeah.
like what you brought up earlier, Jason, which is not part of our conversation before, but now it is, and minimally, I think it's, enforcement can
But I don't think like the word enforcement, and correct me if I'm wrong, Darcy, it's more about compliance.
Compliance.
Yes.
Right.
Okay.
So it's not STR, it's STR compliance monitoring. Our ultimate goal, as Mike always says, is compliance and not punishment. And, but they're busy people doing a million other things. And what Darcy had brought up when I was asking her a couple of questions about the software, and she said, do you want to explain it? Have you explained the software system?
About
The computers.
about the possibility of the other program?
No, about how you have to like know how to use it and manipulate it. And like you have to like tell it to run the information.
Right,
It's not user friendly.
yes, correct. I mean, our existing program is great for the registration of it. The reporting of it though, right, I was saying to Emily, it's like your first computer where you had to program it to do something. So I feel like that is still part of our existing system.
Well, I think like every STR software is still so new. And
Yes,
it's made by a bunch of geeks who like know everything about computers that like when it comes to a layperson, they're like, what do you want me to do? So I think like all the information we need is there. It's just that you need someone focused on how to manipulate that information.
Yep.
How to run the parameters of the report that you're looking for. And so that's like what this STR compliance person would do. The other thing that the STR compliance person would do is cross-reference with the police department every Monday morning, because I heard about complaints over the weekend from rugby that only went to the police department, and that's a problem.
That's been existing since STRs, and
And I don't expect the police to go and tell Mike and Darcy about it, like, that's not what I'm
Yes.
expecting.
No,
I'm expecting this STR compliance monitor to go down on Monday morning and say, where were your police calls for noise, and then just cross-reference that with STRs. And if one of those was an STR, then it gets flagged in the system as a violation, like the police would call it.
the disconnect between the two information
Yeah.
databases leaves a lot of.
Outside of village police,
It's
I don't know
actually
how,
through
yeah.
the state police.
So that's
But I don't think that, but the state police share that, they share that information?
Well, they don't react anyway.
They don't.
Yeah.
That's what I'm, so that's,
Especially if it's outside the village.
so I'm gonna interject just for a second. Now, if I had my experience, and what is Mike's natural reaction if there's a lot going on, what does he say? I don't want him to have to drive and say,
He
what does
says
he
call,
say?
he says call the police.
So you call the state police, do you think they're gonna come out?
They do.
I love, so, but this, so if we do this, there's no outlet for that person who owns their home and just wants to live there and is constantly inundated, and they're gonna, and they have to go to the website, complain, log a complaint, log another complaint, how many times does someone who lives there have to log a complaint before something happens?
Well, that's the point, that's,
But I'm just saying, I'm just like,
and that's what we're going for, is
Someone who's actually
the
paying, like their job is to pay attention to that.
Yes.
And to me, what's gonna happen if this goes into effect and then also based on what the village does, is that there's gonna be a pop-up of a lot of black market short-term rentals.
they're already there.
Yeah, and they're already there, and so it's like keeping on top of that, and being able to manipulate the system to make sure. I didn't share the fees that we collected through STR permit fees, but like I asked Kathy to pull that number together for me, and in 2021, we lost about $70,000 because.
Combined village town.
Yeah, because no one made sure that they paid their fee every year. It's a 2-year permit, which we're changing, so it's not as confusing. And so it's a 1-year permit, renewed annually. Well, in 2021, more than half the STR owners didn't pay their fee. And so that STR compliance monitor would also be making sure that they were paying their fee.
but I think that retroactively, I mean, I think if you looked at the numbers, I think we got the vast majority of those.
Yeah, but we lost out on an entire year of revenue. So I asked Kathy.
No, they didn't get to, so if someone didn't get that initial email and then it was 6 months later and then we sent out more reminders, oh, wait a minute, we didn't pay. They're not getting 6 months for free. It's retroactive back to when they should have, and then they gotta pay again in 6 months.
So we'll see a big jump in 2022.
Exactly.
Yes.
Well, we should also
Because if you remember the end of May, we sent out a direct reminder
Yes,
because of that.
Emily, what's the cost of the permit again?
depends on the number of bedrooms, anywhere from $200 up to $900.
So,
The average is $500.
Yeah.
so when a general STR, and I know that the premise was we don't want to price out those locals that are just doing it for a few weekends or so on and so forth, but those who are making hundreds of
But
thousands of dollars, that's a
then
drop in the bucket.
someone there might be doing a 14-day or less
Which we
permit
also haven't
if it's just for a few weekends.
Which is
And then
okay,
there's no fee for that.
which is okay, so I understand, but just that,
Yeah.
that the person who wants to do just a little bit more to subsidize it, but it's like those who are making hundreds of thousands of dollars, and they're paying
So that's a good point.
$900.
These 14-day or less, we have not talked about those.
So, I mean, the whole thing is that people lie, like if you base all of your stuff on people lying, like most of them are renting.
Some people. not
Some
all.
people. They're renting for more than 14 days and they're just using a 14-day or less permit not to not pay a fee. So do we get rid of 14-day or less? Is it part of the cap? Well, so that's another one that has to be part, either in or out of the cap, or do we completely eliminate it? Is there, how many 14-day or less now? Is that on there?
No. It's,
No address can do
I think the fees we impose will mandate how that category stays or goes, because the last Roost report that I remember, the average night rental ranged from like $250 to $340 a night. That was an average nightly rental, and it was based on a 3-bedroom place. I mean, certainly, the big places that go for $1,000 a night probably don't apply to somebody that wants a 14-day or less. So our fee can mandate whether it's worth someone to have that right, or we don't want to recognize it.
Yeah, I need more, I mean, I think about things a lot, but the 14-day or less is a tough one, because there are some very honest people who I know, they just go to Florida. And so they use it to offset their taxes. And so I would say, well, the reason why we created 14-day or less was for people like that. And we actually at one point, I think, called it, I'm not, well, I probably shouldn't say that, but we called it something else. It was about people who just left their house during Ironman.
Right.
To be able to rent it for Ironman. And so, but the problem is that people, like, they're just using that permit to skirt the system.
circumvent it to make money.
with the right massaging of that software, can we get those? They're permitted.
Yeah, oh, yes.
So
But if we say all of a sudden 14-day or less is
Right.
not part of the exemptions, we're gonna see hundreds of applications for 14-day or less.
No, I think it's our thought of getting rid of them.
Yeah, especially because you can't count.
Right.
Yeah, and then the other discussion that we had at some point was, what if you say 14 days or less, but you have to identify your 14 days? So like when you apply for the permit, you're like, it's Ironman week and High Horse week, or something like, something where they're identifying that. And so when you looked at a calendar and you saw it like on Airbnb, you saw that it was open for like all of July and August, you could go back and say, but it's a whole complicated.
It's a tracking deal,
Yeah.
yeah.
Yes, but that does make sense, is because probably the people that are doing it for 14 days or less, they can do that calendar.
Yes.
Yeah.
And
I'm sure
they'll
they
be
know,
happy to give
we're
you
going that way, we're going that Ironman week, we're going whatever.
I'm okay with that, for sure.
Okay with what, eliminating?
No, I was just saying, if we're doing a 14, if we're going to be ultra strict, you're like, what are your dates? But I don't know how they might change that, but at least it's a smaller number and they would be in communication with the office.
Mike hates when I say this too, so you can mute me, Mike. The other thing about 14-day or less is that I feel like if they're truly 14-day or less, they're not advertising on Airbnb and VRBO, they're renting to the same people that come up.
Right.
Or it's a friend of a friend. And so then, do we even care? Like if it's like they're really their house, like, right? They really actually live there. And
Which is surprising for an STR, but yeah.
Yeah, I mean, personally, I think if we, bring somebody on to check compliance more and everything, I don't have any problem with the 14-day. I'd just soon keep it, as long as we put restrictions on it, or information on it, like you said, what 2 weeks or what 14 days
and
are you
like,
renting?
and that your ad
check
has,
it, and you can check
has
those.
to say, like, this rental, like, this gets so complicated, but, like in your advertisement on VRBO or whatever, it says this house is only available for this week
Right.
and this week.
Or, when you go to the calendar, there it is, boom, boom.
what are we talking about for numbers? Do you have
I feel like it's very low.
I think it's about 50.
How, 50?
In town and village.
Oh,
of 14.
a 14-day or less. And the other crazy thing that Mike has pointed out is that a lot of them are not actual, they're not actual locals. Like, there's like a lot of out-of-state addresses that have 14-day or less. Doesn't mean they're lying,
Right.
but they still could only rent that limited amount of time. But the intention of that was definitely a local intention.
Or somebody, even though they're from out of town and they don't want to do a standard STR, but if they do it for 14 days a year, 2 weeks a year, that will take care of the gap of covering whatever expense,
Sure.
you know.
Will you
I-
research that, Darcy?
Mhm.
Yeah, because I mean, with certain restrictions or more information needed, I'm okay with 14 or less.
I feel like if you're not having to pay for your permit or in your
But I
14 days, like just giving that minimal amount of information seems pretty like a positive, relationship between the municipality.
If we have to track it and follow it,
We
there
gotta
has to
start,
be a
it
fee.
has to be, so yeah, we have to.
Yeah, I get nothing, I mean, it's,
It will be the
they're
most
permitted
part.
anyway, they're permitted anyway, we just
We have to,
add a number to
we have
that,
to tier it, okay.
we just add a number to that permit.
Is that a fair,
And like I said, we will require information from them. When do you want to, when do you, what days are you? And like I said, if I was running 14 days, I have, or let's say I'm running 2 weeks, whether it be split or not, I know what those days are ahead of time.
And I have no issue saying,
That's right.
going to the code enforcement, here, this, and here.
And if we
this.
find that here's the 2 weeks and code enforcement checks it out and they're renting this week, ooh, and you didn't notify us.
Is that our natural segue to the enforcement as a penalty component of it? Or are we not?
I think-
I can't imagine, because then they could probably just say, oh, you know what, we didn't rent this, we got an opportunity, so we rented this. So, I mean, it seems like a lot of work for.
Well, it could be,
Right.
it may or may not be, I mean,
Right.
potentially you're right.
Yeah.
But I mean, we can include in that, okay, you're gonna rent the first week of July and the first week of September, okay? That's what we were told, okay? If it's anything different, you come back to us.
I mean, what if it's 7 weekends? I mean, are we keeping track of, you didn't rent August 1st weekend, you rented September 15th weekend? I mean, who's keeping track of all that?
But I just bet
That
the
seems-
majority of them are 2 weeks. I mean, they may or not be together, but I'm just speculating, just,
Right.
whatever. I think we started to talk about what we want to do with the permit rates. And I think we should keep going with that.
do 14-day or less have to follow the guidelines for the regular permit? They have to have a caretaker? They have
Yes,
to have that?
everything's the same except there's no fee.
Okay,
So, because of this, like I said, we're looking at increasing the fees, putting fees on 14-day or less for the purpose of giving your department, not assistance, but giving you more staff. In other words, we're not gonna say we're gonna take this person, throw them in there for a few days, your staff. So I think, that will allow, some more time spent on this compliance.
so not to belabor this much longer.
Is this not fun?
That's what I dream about.
Yeah.
Go to bed. It keeps you up at night because you're
Was it a dream or a
constantly.
nightmare?
It's like a town hall.
This is one area that I think is gonna get abused terribly, terribly.
And that's why the
Potentially,
code
yes,
office
you're right.
wants it gone.
Yeah,
I think we would say, just have a regular permit. And
And you're under the cap,
Right.
whatever type of permit it is.
that's right.
Oh, but like
You
the
pay the
Sylvan
fee.
Resort, that person could get just the permit.
But my point of, chances are somebody that's doing the 14-day or less, they just decided, okay, we're gonna go away those 14 days. And we're going to rent out our home to make money just so I can pay my taxes, okay? Now, we're going to impose a higher amount on them for a permit, which would negate, let's say, a week.
It wouldn't be
No,
worth,
it's
it wouldn't be worth it.
Probably not a week.
It would be a minimal,
it'd be like one night.
yeah.
I mean, if they're in a 2-bedroom home, it's $200.
Well, we're talking about increasing them,
Okay.
okay? So,
Yeah, but
I know what you're saying there,
full, like,
existing,
category.
but we're talking about increasing that. I just, So then they have to go to, well, you got to wait for another week. I'm just saying, I mean, the person that's truly renting 14 days or less, we're penalizing them.
Then I suggest we wait till we get the number so we know what
Okay.
we're dealing with.
Okay, that's fine.
This is why I'm okay with getting rid of it, because those people, they have the connections to already rent without us seeing it. And so like, it's just
No.
done behind the scenes. And so I'm kind of fine with that, like, just let them continue.
Couple people I know, they have their regulars.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, those people, yeah.
So you would never know they were renting
That's right.
unless
yeah.
there was
Hey.
non-compliance. Not that we want to promote that.
Yeah, that's why my doesn't leave when I say it.
Yeah, I have to think about that one, but I also want to see the numbers.
Do we want to settle it now or do you want to wait?
No, we can wait.
Okay,
Now, okay, so what do we think, what are our thoughts on the permit rates?
well, I guess for the public, we've all seen the numbers. In most basic terms, town outside village takes in approximately $60,000 on the permits now. That is an average of $500 a year, like Darcy was saying, it ranges from 2 to 9. But those huge places are much fewer. The bulk of things are 3-bedroom. So if, for instance, Emily's idea of having a monitor person, which is looking like it's very important to watch things now, we know we could easily need another $20,000 to $30,000 to pay for that service. In order to make that money up with no further profits, we would need to take 200 rentals and bump them up $100 a year.
Yeah.
That would give us $20,000. So a permit fee would have to go on average from $500 to $600, just to cover what we've already recognized, what we need in further services. So all it does is status quo, unless we want our profit margin to go up and then a permit goes up by $200. And in most cases, so everybody understands it, if the average rental night is $300, which is, I'm sure, very close to the actual, a person will have to rent 2 nights to cover the price of their permit.
And that's where I'm coming from. That's
Yeah.
I've had a number of discussions you guys thought. I mean, I'll throw out a number and we can take it from there, is increasing them by 50%. Which would cover obviously the cost and put it more realistic. Like I said, when a permit, like I said, Derek said, you can make it back in 2 nights. I'm just throwing that number out, increase the rates from what they are now by 50%.
Well, and I think we're legally required to just be covering our admin costs, there's no like profit margin here.
Right.
And so I think if that covers our additional admin costs, then.
And there needs to be some sort of justification.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, no, I
Just
understand,
throw
but
it
I think with all
Whether
of
it's communities or
Yeah,
admin costs.
with everything, I mean, paying for our software,
Mhm.
paying for an additional person,
Or person.
separate, thank you. And, I think a 50%, and it's approximate,
Mhm.
we could justify whatever that figure would be, could be 48%, whatever, or 52 or whatever. I think if we can justify that figure, I like the approximate 50% increase.
The determining factors, of course, are the growth, which we already can see will happen in the planned development, against whatever reduction we want
Right.
in the other areas.
See, that's what I'm looking at is, we don't know the, exact, well, we know it's being built, but we don't know the exact, but we can figure out eventually the reduction. So we've got to compensate for that and bring on potentially 1 or 2 people, et cetera.
I'm just looking at it from a teacher's perspective, where we work backwards, what do we want our code enforcement office to look like? And what is the cost? And then and that would could inform the fees.
Yeah, so I think we need to have, like, the liaisons need to have a conversation with the building office to
Yeah.
see what they want it to look like. And what their capacity exists within their office.
Well, that's the thing. We can come up with that number and then work backwards and say, okay, it's a
This is where we have to get.
42% increase.
What else?
Okay, I brought it up last meeting, making the, I'm not gonna talk to you. Making, if you have an adjacent property, bordering property, and your primary residence is here, your STR is here, but they're two different lots. If they border, not across the street, not diagonal, not skip a lot or whatever, I'm suggesting that we make those hosted. Because it's just a line in the yard separating you. It's basically just one big lot in the perception that you're from here to there. You could even be closer.
So let's go further, because I can remember Rick jumping in. If that idea were accepted, then would it be a limit to just one? Because like Rick said, if you own this middle one and you buy all these properties around the side, how many?
How many can you host?
Well, first of all, it's,
Yeah.
In theory, you
okay,
can.
we can make it off your primary residence. Okay, so in other words, theoretically, it could be more than one. Okay, and theoretically, the chances are it would be minimal. But the point is, if you own this one and you live on this one, and you bought this lot, and this is an STR, and you bought this lot as an STR, no, just off your primary residence.
Yeah.
So this one is not
You
included.
could have like 4 or 5 in the back. But I'm also saying at this point is now you can move,
Right.
because we said this example only exists in town and village residential. There's no rural countryside who owns a lot next door. You know what I, like, your
Okay.
example is in town and village residential. Tell me yes.
No.
Where is it? Tell me the road.
Type it then.
Great road,
Oh.
okay?
Hi.
Yeah,
Way to make it awkward, Emily.
what it is, it's a situation.
No, it is, I mean, Derek is a situation. His situation brought me to it, but it could be any place.
Well, if you're, and I had this conversation with one of the caretakers, whether you are from Jersey, Pennsylvania, California, or you're a local and you are buying a property just to run them as STR, you're contributing to the same problem. Whether you've lived here or you don't live here, you're contributing to the same problem.
But the thing is,
But why does it matter? Because we're capping the number of permits.
Well, that's why I say this doesn't apply if we hold.
that's what I'm saying.
Hosted
This is
versus.
what you were saying, but I'm just throwing this out as far as the definition of hosted.
Okay, if we decide that hosted is a part of the cap, then we can have this conversation. But like, if it
We can
doesn't.
still-
As of now,
No,
it doesn't even
It
apply.
doesn't matter, because.
No, I'm just saying, change the definition.
I know, but there's gonna be no delineation between hosted and unhosted really anymore, because we're getting rid of the number of days, we're getting rid, like, the fact that you can't, do you understand what I'm saying? Like, there's no delineation, and so it doesn't matter if something is hosted or
It couldn't
unhosted.
apply
We
right
probably
now.
can get
Right
rid
now.
of the.
Well, I hope
hosted-
there is, because they're saying hosted is at least gonna maintain sort of a sense of normalcy, and, but if we're, I know maybe from the language perspective, you're not
We said
doing
that hosted, the cap applies to hosted, that was what we said.
Yeah.
And so we don't even probably need to delineate, we don't need a definition for either one now. Like,
Because whoever's in
it's
now,
just a
that's
short-term
it.
rental.
Right. That's it.
If we go that, I mean, we haven't decided upon that.
Okay, but I'm just saying, if we.
No, if we go that route, I agree with you.
Okay.
But I'm just saying, to enter that in, it doesn't make any sense for me. You know, if it's a big lot or there's a line in the middle, it doesn't make any difference. I'm just saying, down the road, depending where we go, that becomes, that changes that.
I think
definition.
if we all of a sudden say that hosted is something special, we can have that conversation,
Okay.
but right now, we're not saying that hosted is
That's why
something
I'm
special.
throwing it out. That's why. I moved
Look what you
away.
did, Dick, you made Emily upset.
That's not the first time, okay?
Or the last.
Okay.
North Lake, South Lake, whatever's existing, that's it.
No, well, and they can be, they're in the cap,
Right.
so new permits could come on as. the
Once we
wait
hit
list-
a
Yeah.
level.
Yeah.
So then all we have to redefine our actual numbers so we know where we stand.
So we know what that cap is.
Yeah.
And then I also need to listen to Mike yell at me for like an hour about what we decided.
Okay, cool. As long as you're listening.
But, listen, especially with the PD, we needed to get there.
And we left 14 day or less as a big question mark.
Mhm. And we'll get the number.
Yeah, I just want to see, so Darcy, we can, obviously, we want to see I'd like to see, just so I can get a perception of it a little bit, it's not only, the whole list as far as quantity and just like this, the address.
Yep.
Because we all know who some of the people are.
Mhm.
So therefore I wouldn't go, oh yeah, that, oh yeah, oh yeah.
Yep.
They're 14, they're 14, they're 14, ooh, maybe not.
Yeah.
Gotcha.
Yep.
Thank you.
Is that our only low hanging fruit? Do we have to better define Old Military where it ends as far as recognizing it as gateway?
I think
It's its own district, old military corridor.
that's what I'm
okay.
looking at, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, it stops.
Are there any other problems we haven't thought about with delineating frontage and lots behind in any of the districts? Did we cover that good
Well, I
enough?
guess that's a question for Darcy. When people apply for a permit, they understand, because that's already part of our system.
Right,
That there's
okay.
there's a difference if you front.
Yeah.
And I have to say, we base it on address, and it doesn't always work out that way. Like, there's houses,
Yeah.
there's houses that are behind, like on Cascade Road.
Right.
After the corner store, there's houses that are behind,
Mhm.
but they still have an address on Cascade Road.
Same on Old Military.
Yeah, and so we just have to accept that there's places where that happened, and we have been saying that those are exempt, because it's about their address. So if it says Cascade Road, if it
Okay.
says Sentinel Road, if it says Wilmington Road, right?
I probably should wait to bring this up, but I'm not gonna. I still don't understand gateway corridor and the vast amount of land in Raybrook. To me, it does not make sense.
So what doesn't make sense?
How can we split it? Is there a way?
Yeah, we
That
split it by
Raybrook-
saying the frontage.
No, like
Yeah,
right
yeah.
between Raybrook where there's prime opportunity for development, like there's swaths, but whereas everything else is getting
Well,
constructed.
most of Raybrook is state.
Yeah.
So, like where I live, I'm 1,000 feet or 1,500 feet from the road, so there's no frontage. The lots are big. It should be a rural countryside designation, or I'm wondering why it's not.
And what are you, gateway corridor?
Gateway corridor. It's a huge,
It's 86 away from
Yeah, I think it goes back to 2011. I think the idea was to give Raybrook some ability to grow. Because
Yeah.
you can do a lot more in gateway corridor than rural countryside.
okay.
Yep, so that's
What's,
why.
your address is State Route 86?
Oh, yeah, but
No,
private.
it's Wolf Pond Way. It's a road that goes in and out one way.
So in other words.
But it-
Territory
Territory
estate lane.
It encompasses a pretty good chunk of property.
Right. Yeah.
Did I answer your question?
Yeah,
Okay.
a delineation to hope for development. And I mean, a vast majority of that property has been for sale for a number of years. Okay. I feel us being pretty close now. Is there any way that, we have almost 45 minutes left. Can we solve this 14-day thing?
I think we want to see the numbers first.
How much work will it take to get those numbers? Britt'll have to dig in?
Yeah.
Okay,
I mean, I think that's,
Couple
you
hours.
schedule a number of meetings after
Yes.
this, and we are so close, that basically we need, with Darcy's information, one more meeting.
then, as everyone probably knows, next week is another attorney-client privilege for us to go over today's meeting with legal questions. Again, like we talked in the beginning, I'd like to get thoughts on this August 23rd meeting to take public input.
I support it.
I mean, believe it or not, I'm with Jason. I'm gonna step back.
What?
I think there's nothing wrong with taking, you don't have to quote me, Lauren, that's okay.
Don't quote him agreeing with me.
No, there's nothing wrong with public input to any extent.
As long as there's clarity, it's not a public forum, so to
Right.
speak.
Right.
This doesn't substitute for
No, no.
What
a
do we
public
think?
hearing.
That's my question to
Yeah,
Terry.
right.
So because normally it's a public hearing on a very specific thing.
Well,
We don't have anything specific. We have a lot of thoughts that were thrown out there.
exactly. So,
But that's when you want me to write it up.
Yeah,
So in other words,
So they have something
what you're
concrete to
saying
look
is
at,
this
distinct to be able to
this
reference.
date would be a question and answer.
as it addresses what Emily's gonna, so that it's confined to where we've brought ourselves.
Right.
I don't wanna go back with public comment that says, I think it should be this, I think.
Right.
We have a direction set. I would take input on that, those directives, if you will.
And we would, if the public had questions, we would answer them.
That's up
Because
for
it's not a public
discussion.
hearing where they're just taking input, we're just taking
See, a
comments.
public hearing,
We're not answering.
and we're not responding.
That's, so.
And I
that would
feel
be
like
the
if
reason
we
why.
can, we should respond.
And that's what I'd like to do is take questions and if, and answer them. And then have the public hearing, okay.
I think it's gonna minimize when, because I don't know, my initial reaction, or my initial thought is when this gets presented to the public, from my perspective, I don't know how, it may not be the most well-received component of it, but if there is an opportunity if there is something concise written up and then they ask specific questions and it gets out into the consciousness of the community, then they would say, okay, we have an opportunity to chat with
In other
everyone.
words, if there's some aspect.
That's glaring to them, that not to
Could you
us.
explain that to me?
Yeah.
So we can explain it.
So let me ask the question differently then. Would you prefer that we ran a public hearing on the 23rd where their concerns came in and we have a chance to answer those among ourselves? Either way,
That's more palatable to me.
either way, I'm allowing the public to share their concerns before the finality of this thing.
Well, that's all.
I think that's where we're all going. We don't want to say no to listening.
Right.
But we still need to recognize a process so we can get to where we need to be.
I'm with either way. And I can see both points.
And not expecting an answer. I mean, if we have the answer, then it's given, obviously,
Right.
but.
Or it could be if we had the public hearing and all these questions came up and it's like if we did it the other way and we said, well, let me get back. Okay, this way we have it, Rick's way, we have the question, and by the time we have the next meeting, we have the answer. I'm good with either way.
I think it should be a public hearing, because otherwise we're gonna be debating the public,
Yes.
and I don't think that's something we wanna do.
Okay,
I'll definitely take questions and then come up with answers if we have them, but I don't want to debate.
Okay, that's fine.
I guess, questions and rationalizations, like debating, I think it's just the managing of the whole, what are your questions? And I guess if we can, because I think as elected officials, we should be able to provide a sound rationale as why we made those decisions.
And that happened here, Jason.
What's that?
It's already,
That's-
it's
yeah,
happened
That's
here.
it. And
Like all of these decisions were based on conversations that we've been having for 3 weeks.
No, I'm talking about the public, not us.
It's open to.
But
But it's open
it
to
is,
the public, that's the point.
but it is 9:00 on a weekday
I just
where people work.
I just question what the questions will be, or if they'll just be comments about,
that aren't applicable.
yeah.
right, that's the thing. Like I said, I'm good with either way. And as long as we've got the meetings set up, we can use them. It's not like we, boom. we got-
And am I wasting a day in August when it should be a little further down the road? But keep in mind, September 14th is our moratorium deadline, right?
Mhm, right. No,
If we
I'd
have,
leave them the way they
if
are.
we have the meeting time, then that's fine,
It's
which
our-
it seems like we will.
You set the meetings, so I would use those dates and define them as such.
Okay,
And I'm fine with,
As a public hearing to respond to the draft proposal.
yes.
Well, it's a draft, the pre-draft.
the pre-draft of the draft.
Is the 23rd logical then for you for timing?
That'll give us,
That's a Tuesday.
the next meeting is closed, and then the following meeting.
Yeah, but that's the thing, what do we,
School starts for me the following week after that, the 23rd meeting. So I go back to school, last week of August.
Okay,
so if we do,
Or school starts.
So,
and the last week is Wednesday, the 31st?
So if we do the 16th, we finalize everything, 14 day and all that stuff.
Right.
Okay, and the 16th. So then the 23rd, we do the public hearing. And then we pick a date and answer.
But you know that then, like, we still have to have it, I'm just
An
gonna say,
actual public hearing.
yeah, I think that we might need to extend the moratorium by like a month. Because of legalities of public hearings and getting the county to approve it.
Yeah,
Right.
Not because of anything that we're stalling,
No,
but just because of the process.
Administration.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I would say, make the public hearing 23rd. And then,
The pre-public hearing.
Pre-public hearing, yeah. Then there's the initial public hearing.
and then we'd have to come up with a date to answer those.
now personally, even though you mentioned mornings, I think this has been a successful forum. We've had
Some
4 to 6
participation,
to
yeah.
7 people on screen, at least the same number showing up.
Mhm.
Is that logical for a public hearing or not?
I think,
If we want to maximize the number of voices, then the evening time would probably be more appropriate, but that's just my 2 cents. But if you want to keep in mind, I see where you're going, like,
Well, everything's been
Efficiency.
consistent. I don't care. Whatever you choose, I'm fine with.
I think by making an evening, I know what you're saying, but I just, I don't know if it would make a difference or not. And like, for the sake of consistency,
There is email, there's telephone calls.
that's right, yeah. It's recorded.
I think it should be in the morning.
Okay,
I'll go on
so we are currently on for 9 to 10:30.
on the 23rd.
Yep. And everybody's okay with this idea?
Yeah.
Who will run this public hearing? You know, we've all been to some that go awry. 2 minutes?
I can run the timer if you like. And then,
Okay. But we should have a moderator. You want to raise your hand?
I'll do the timing, so you don't have to do the cell phone.
Yeah, and I think, the rules are, this is pertaining to the town.
A reaction to what
And-
this little draft.
Correct,
memo is.
not a platform to express your opinion on short-term rentals or not.
We will have copies of the draft
You
here.
can- They can do that at the official public hearing.
Correct.
Yeah, which is reasonable and fair.
The intent
Still under
is,
2 minutes though.
Yeah.
Be concise.
Basically, this is just an increased opportunity for the public to ask questions.
Should we moderate it? Should I have someone separate?
No, I can moderate it.
Okay.
are you wrapping up for today?
I'm going to propose that next. Unless you have an,
How about back to this wait list? How?
yeah, that's a good point.
So at Breckenridge, the waitlist, Darcy, is actually, when you go to fill out the form, it's through GovOS. It says like you'll get an email with a date timestamp from Gov, some sort of support at GovOS. So that's our current software. So I think we can ask our current software how they manage the waitlist. So it's out of people's hands and into computers' hands.
Right,
Yeah.
and precedent.
Yeah.
That's good, it's an objection. Sure.
That was an easy one, thank you.
Wow.
And
He's gonna make it.
I am
It looks like
gonna
another
make
15-minute conversation. You're gonna print that in color.
where will we have a wait list now since our talk today?
So there will be a wait list. Hold on, I go back to my reference points. Rural countryside, North Lake, South Lake, not fronting on Old Military and Gateway. That's where we have a wait list.
Okay, so should we bring up Laura's letter?
Yeah.
Or the 5
It applies.
minimum.
It's just, I mean, you in the very beginning said you didn't want to talk about acreage, so I don't know.
About what?
Acreage.
Right, I mean, so far, we have just identified allowed or not allowed.
And
Personally,
we also didn't talk about Deerwood, which is to Laura's point, because now we've dropped that conversation about Deerwood.
Yes.
Where existing stand and there be no more.
No, because there can be more, because Deerwood is rural countryside.
Oh, that's right.
Unless we do want to change Deerwood to town residential, which could be done in the same process, correct, Darcy? The same like local law could be
Yeah, I think so.
changing if we did want to do that.
That's logical for that area
Yeah,
because it fits.
but to Laura's point, there's a couple other spots that have, like, subdivisions in rural countryside that have smaller lots.
Yeah. So I guess logistically speaking, tell me the difference between a 3-acre lot and a 5-acre lot. They're both huge.
Yeah.
And
Maybe one thing.
How big are
Is-
lots on Deerwood, do you think, Darcy? You compare sizes.
I mean, hard to say.
I'm fine
Maybe
with
they're
3
all
acres.
an acre,
yeah, well,
I think
I'm
You said
not,
an
yeah.
acre?
maybe an acre, yeah.
Yeah, like, I don't know how Deerwood didn't get pulled into rural countryside. They're tiny lots.
Yeah. Something like that.
So,
So I think there's a difference between like 5 acres and what Deerwood is. I mean,
Right.
Deerwood is super
well,
small.
see, I think Deerwood's the easy thing, change the zoning.
Yeah.
Rural countryside, I gotta take what you guys think.
I'll look at a map and see the other areas that, but I do know that the Langsco Committee looked at it and it was really only Deerwood that fell like, that had like, 1-ish acre lots.
Yeah.
Everything else was maybe more, like even like Boulder Woods, maybe more like 3+.
And any history of rural countryside complaints? How have things been over the last 2 years?
But may I ask a question, like what would be the average cost for a 5-acre lot rural countryside?
Yeah, there's no affordability in rural countryside, with, to me, with the exception of Deerwood. We're not supposed to be talking about.
You can look at assessed values.
Yeah, I'll
And it's
go-
really only Deerwood. Okay, I'll talk to you after.
We've had a couple, Derek, a couple complaints at a house in Deerwood. Otherwise, rural countryside, nothing's jumping to mind as a big problem.
And we're talking about 28?
Yeah.
No,
Yeah, rural countryside's probably not that many.
11.
With the potential for more,
More.
depending what's built.
And 9 hosted. So 20,
Yeah,
There's 9 hosted in rural countryside.
according to these.
Yeah, I look at the
I'm trying to
potential.
picture what that looks like.
I look at the potential, a lot of these could be, even in the future, hosted.
growth areas.
You didn't delineate between hosted and
So where do you want to leave it? Next meeting? You want to tackle it?
Yeah, I'll look at a map. I can look at the map right now, I guess. We have half an hour. All right, I said I wouldn't interact with the public, but Laura, what did you say the areas were?
But they're just like the roads named Lane and Way, basically, there are a bunch of, I don't think it's on this map.
There's smaller ones.
Could you? 7, yeah, it goes out here and it's off,
Okay, so if you
it's
continue
all
on,
out here.
this is like out by Cascade.
Yeah, between the water and Cascade.
Okay, so like Coyote Way maybe?
Yeah, there are a whole bunch of
Or
lanes. and ways.
Timberlane.
Yeah, Timberlane stuff
Okay.
would be like the first one.
I would say that I'm okay with short-term rentals being out there because we're not supposed to talk about affordability, but those houses are like $1 million.
Not by assessed
Okay, so
value.
that's why I need more time, so let me
Yeah.
talk to Todd about the assessments out there. Am I missing any, Darcy, on the bigger map, or on the tinier map yet? Bigger map? Boulderwood,
Okay.
but Boulderwood is probably $800 to $1 million for assessments.
So if I'm reading this right, are we suggesting that because Mirror Lake Drive would be comparable to this?
No, I'm not suggesting anything.
No, I just mean bringing in assessment.
Oh. No, I mean,
That's the part I have a problem with.
then keep it, then I'm okay with keeping it as proposed,
Yeah,
which is pulling Deerwood into town residential.
right. And rural countryside, whatever is existing, that's it.
And they can like be on the wait list.
On a wait list,
Yeah.
exactly. Once we determine a number. Okay. So that's safe to say, right now I only see 2 items for next meeting. 14-day in rural countryside, the wait list, or who will qualify to be on a wait list.
And a number.
Yeah,
Number's going to be the tricky part.
But we gotta figure out what we wanna do.
49 residential. So if we do not renew those are automatic. Need to look at
Yeah.
My guess is gonna be around 100.
the cap.
The number that if we take out. what we
So the
said,
number of
taking out,
existing is 120.
I think it's probably around there.
Okay.
So you mean 100, exempting 120 from the cap number.
No, exempting 86, the other one, that 120 fall under.
120 was following.
Darce, when you have those numbers, will you forward that to all of us?
Excuse me.
Do you want to yell at us for anything today?
No,
Mike's not here, so it's your turn, go for it.
no.
So you realize the next time we will get to talk about these 2 items is the 16th?
Right.
Because next week is Mark Shackner.
Yep.
Unless you want me to change it and
Yeah,
go
but why don't we push Mark Shackner one
to the
more?
16th.
Yeah.
Doesn't seem like a long meeting with Mark.
No, we get right to it.
Yeah, and we all know Mark.
Yeah.
Here it is.
Okay, so then Lori is gonna fire me.
Yeah, she's gonna.
She'll have to renotice these, and for the public, just so you know, next week will be open to the public.
Tuesday the 9th.
Yes.
Yeah, let's get everything done.
Just leave a note on her desk.
More logical, don't you think? Let's get stuff right now.
Yeah.
Leave
We
a
should be
note.
asking more questions.
Yeah, send her an email.
And then the 16th is closed.
And the 16th will be attorney-client.
Stick your head out to your office and go, there's an email coming.
Okay. Okay, so 8-9 is now open. 8-16 is Mark Shackner. 8-23 will be a public hearing. Am I forgetting anything? Oh, you're being good to me today, you guys.
Well, you gotta deal with Lori, so it'll be nice.
What else are we forgetting, Rick?
Rick, you were about to say something.
Well, I was thinking originally there was going to be a merged meeting between village and town. Is that still?
I was actually hoping sometime in that last week of August.
Yeah.
Okay.
So, and I think they'll be ready by then.
By then.
You-
And Jason, Jason is, I talk to Jackie all the time, and so does, I'm assuming Jason relays what we're doing here to them, but I keep Jackie appraised.
And Jason, you've relayed today many similarities in our thought process.
There are some sentiments that they're on the same wavelength.
Capping accepted or amortizing?
There's a thought, there's a growing thought that cap is a way to go, but I don't know how deep it's been explored. The town has been more advances in our discussions than the village has, but we're getting,
Okay,
the other village board's getting close.
and are you thinking the end of August could fit for us to jointly? And do you see it as being a successful, I mean,
I guess what would the goal be?
That's not, I think that's a conversation I would think you would want with the mayor,
Yeah.
to say where, have, after the draft, to say, here's what we are, the town board is tentatively, where are you? And then if it doesn't seem like, because at that point, it might be more of a hindrance than it would be to be.
exactly.
Right, yeah, I think.
Because we have each board has the ability to impact or affect law, to change the law
Right.
separately. So.
I mean, we want to consider each other.
Sure.
And if there's room for this, do it, but, but I don't know. If we
So we'll
really-
leave it as a possibility, but,
So I think the last board said he was going to potentially reach out to you.
okay,
And then I think the two of you would probably have a better,
sure,
the village is closing in, but I think there's still some questions for it.
okay.
The interesting thing about like the districts that, so this is why the village is a little bit, the village is different in many ways. But like the districts that we said the cap applies, they're none, like they're over, there's no rural countryside in the village, right?
Right,
There's no South Lake, or sorry, no North Lake in the village. And there's very limited South Lake in the village. And so I think the cap might not even make sense for them, because if you look at the districts, it doesn't make sense.
Well, the majority of them are like in our neighborhood.
Yeah.
So it's like,
Just right down Hillcrest.
so there is an understanding that keeping the storefronts on, the gateway corridor, there's no business in the gateway corridor. And then if you want to rent above, there is a philosophy of there's a thought process of being somewhat aggressive, but then there's some, it's been also.
back and forth, okay. You guys okay with the progress we're making?
Oh, yeah, okay.
But do you think, at what point do you think we should say there's a possibility that we're going to extend it for administrative reasons for 30 days? And that's a question for Mark, maybe.
Yeah, I'd say on the 16th, we can present that.
The 16th is the Mark meeting.
Yes,
Okay.
Does that give enough time?
Yeah, I guess that's my question. I don't know what the process is to extend.
well, I think that gives us almost a month. I think the 14th is our.
Darcy, do you know?
My birthday, I remember.
I do think it's 14.
Yeah.
Because I think we need to hold another public hearing to extend it. Maybe not. Maybe it's not that.
So, and I should apologize for always assigning things, but this draft that you will put together, we will have it for next week.
What's today, Thursday? And we meet on Tuesday or Thursday?
Tuesday.
Tuesday.
Quick
We meet
turnaround.
on Tuesday the 9th. So, I mean,
Yeah, it just will probably, it's gonna be like very draft.
but
Like
that's
bullet
all.
points and-
I mean,
As long as you spell the words correctly.
we had the exempt column and then,
Yeah. I actually thought about bringing like flipboards down here, but that's what I did here.
I'm happy to help, but believe me, I know you will coordinate this better than I would do.
I was gonna say, she doesn't need our help.
No,
They might make it more difficult.
That's what I mean.
if I can offer to take the kids or something. Each for the hour. I
No,
will.
that's the names for it.
And Darcy's gonna have Britt dig up.
Yep.
14 day or less.
And break down, right, the ones that would be
In the
in the
resort.
cap.
Yeah.
Yes.
So she's gonna need to figure, like, she's gonna need to look at the addresses.
Yes.
To determine the PDU ones.
Yeah.
Cool. Process is going good so far. Again, I thank the public. We've seen some new faces each time, and I'll call old faces every meeting.
Repeat faces.
Yeah, I was about to say something, I was just like.
I embrace it.
Was that-
Okay.
Anyway,
I'm sure that's not what he meant.
we appreciate all the input that we've received. I'm fully aware that we will all be judged for a long time on the outcome of this process, but it's very important to the community as a whole. And I really am impressed that I feel we are finding fairness on each side. So I believe we've done a good job so far. With that being said, I'll take a motion to adjourn.
You got it.
Second, oh, I'm sorry, Lauren, yeah,
Oh,
go ahead.
Okay, I just wanted to clarify some points of your direction. Well, first I want to make sure I've got the meetings right. Tuesday the 9th and the 23rd at 9 AM are open to the public?
Yes, but the 23rd will now be a public hearing.
Right, okay.
Yep,
So
an
these
informal
could-
public hearing,
Yeah.
not an informal one, not a public, not an official one, because we will have an official draft to present.
So people can provide input and then you guys won't directly address them, but maybe talk amongst yourselves about the
right.
questions or concerns.
We'll do everything we can to answer. If not, we will take the input and it will give us time to address it.
And there's a possibility that you'll extend the moratorium just like to hash out the dates for the public hearings and everything.
Just to base that,
For administrative,
Administrative
Yeah.
purposes.
like that the law has to have a public hearing and the law also has to be approved by the county. So it depends on when the county meets. So there's a little bit of a delay in things.
so if we go to September 14th, which is a Wednesday, if we were ready and the public hearing was over, I could put that in front of the county on Monday, the 12th. But that, I have a feeling because of the legalities, it will be Mark that will put that in front of the county.
Yes.
Yeah,
Or Mark's draft that will go.
exactly.
Okay, and you guys are talking about potentially bringing on additional staff in the building department to help with,
I can't say yet that it's additional staff or reassigning extra duties for the staff we have. We'll know more as we correlate actual numbers and permits that we expect to have to deal with and any added enforcement duties that come because of our direction.
Compliance duties.
Yeah, compliance.
okay.
We're getting better at that.
We are, you can't, old dog for tricks, okay? Come on.
Yeah, but look how the paper bailed you out today.
He knows I didn't bring it to make you feel bad. I didn't bring it.
What else you got, Lauren?
Okay, so you're talking about a cap. No new permits in residential,
Two districts, town residential and village residential.
but you only have say over the town, right?
No, we have village residential within the town. I know, it's confusing.
Okay, so it's village inside the town.
So it's, there's like 8 base districts. There's a base district that's called village residential and there's a base district that's called town residential, and both those exist within town boundaries.
Outside of village.
Yeah, outside of village.
And vice versa.
It's just a name.
So, yeah,
It's
so
not
the village,
geographically relevant.
Okay,
the village also has town residential.
okay.
Not to be too confusing,
I know.
No.
Inside,
especially with the town, the village inside the town.
Yeah,
Okay, but those would be included in the cap, the existing permits that are there. But if someone like sells their home in a residential, then they couldn't get another one, the next person.
In those 2 districts.
Right.
That's what we're saying, yes.
Okay,
Some districts will be able to go on a wait list after we set the cap number.
okay, so that's the,
And I think, sorry, but going back, just for clarity, it's with the sale of the home. The permit will not transfer.
right.
Right.
And there's no consideration for unhosted or hosted in this cap. It sounds like.
Yeah, right, so like, if we continue to go this path, I feel like that there's not even a term hosted and unhosted anymore, it's just a short-term rental permit.
Okay. And you're talking about taking away day limits, although there's still the question of the 14-day limit.
That's pretty much true around the horn.
Yeah, so the
No day limits.
120-day limit, we're considering getting rid of.
That's
In favor of the cap.
going to spark some conversation.
Okay. I think that was all that I had.
We'll let you get that article out, so you get the rebuttal.
We can't wait to read your article.
You can always call Darcy for clarification, Emily, not me.
Can you hold off on that article?
But we're glad that you're part of the group that understands how complicated it can get quickly. Yep. All right, so I had a motion to adjourn, I had a second, all in favor? Aye. No one opposed.
No.
Thank you, everyone.
I do have 10 minutes.